Holla ballers, it's Preacher. We're looking at the Arcane Mage coming to the end of our Mage looks for Warlords of Draenor. So hopefully most of you are actually pretty happy with how things are right now. And the big concern was Arcane. And rightfully so. Arcane boasted on my first playthrough of this early in the Warlords of Draenor beta that Arcane was in fact fun and interesting. And it was a baffling moment because Arcane is traditionally horrible and dull and tragically underwhelming in all aspects. And just small changes that have occurred in Warlords actually made it great. Really, really fun. And the big fear, I actually stepped into the playing of the Arcane Mage yesterday with intrepidation. I actually thought, what if they took it away? What if they just renounced it back? Like they did with so many other specs. We've seen changes that have been for the good over the Walls of Draenor and many classes that have been reverted or removed entirely in order to really cope with balance and to make things work a little bit nicer. And therefore, gameplay has been sacrificed somewhat. And it was great fear that I thought I'd walk into Arcane and be like, ugh. Please don't, because it's really fun now, and I like it. And it's the first time I've ever enjoyed Arcane ever in the history of the game since I first tried it in vanilla. And I'm glad to say it is still as fun. In my opinion, it is about number 2. Frost is still my favourite. Arcane is easily rocking in at number 2. And Fire would be 3 in terms of my enjoyment of the class, which for me makes the Mage a really well-rounded class for Warlords of Draenor. I think there's very little to complain about, honestly. It will come down to what the DPS numbers are, and that's alright. That can be changed elsewhere. If we've got solid fucking gameplay to build on, happy goddamn days. And so far, the worst thing I can say about the Mage overall is that Fire's a little bit stale. Oh god, what a bad situation to be in, right? Oh my god, the sky's falling. No, that is wonderful. That is fucking great news. So, what makes Arcane so special this time around? They've done some nice tweaks with it, and I think somebody put it on the forums quite well, is that I feel like an Arcane Mage now. Arcane should be fun. Arcane shouldn't be boring, because the power of Arcane from lore and myth is actually a very interesting and fun style of magic. And to have that be the most dull and linear plod along fucking doldrums style of playing the game is just not adequate enough. Arcane power still exists and is still super boring. We have to take that into effect. There's no doubt about that. But what they have done is give us some nice talent choices which are Arcane specific, which really add on to the momentum of the spec. So let's talk about those then. Well, let's talk about the basics of the class. What are you going to be doing on your Arcane Mage? You're still rocking around with the Arcane charges. There was nothing particularly wrong with that mechanic. It was just the way of obtaining them that was really boring. The fact that we just had to press Arcane Blast or Hit and Hope with Arcane Explosion in order to gain Arcane Charges is really fucking boring. So what the talents have done is just give us different things to do with Arcane Charges, which is wonderful to see. But you've still got that baseline style of play of keeping your mana relatively high and keeping control of your mana via your control of Arcane Charges. You're still going to be trying to float around high mana with 4 Arcane Charges and using different tools in order to stay up there for as long as possible and then reset them and get back up to 4 as much as possible while maintaining a nice high mana curve. So along those lines, nothing much has changed. The talents are what's made it more interesting. What I like is that Arcane has some really fun ways of playing single target and AoE, which is odd because it's never been that. It's been the single target smash in the face spell. So if we look down to the way Nether Tempest works now, it's the only bomb that's available to Arcane, and now it works actually based on your Arcane Charges, which is lovely, so it gains benefit for your how many Arcane Charges you've got. Damage increased by 50% per Arcane Charge at cast time. Worded wonderfully, by the way, so there's no doubt in anyone's mind that casting it at 4 is better than casting it at 3. Simple as that. So you've got this wonderful little thing to maintain because Nether Tempest doesn't last very long. It's 12 seconds. You're actually going to be doing quite a fair bit of interaction with the game in between those 12 seconds. So you'll see in the background is I'm still learning to do it better because I'm habitually not overwriting my Nether Tempest like I actually need to be now with Arcane, which is you'll cast it when you hit 4 Arcane Charges, and then when you're about to dump your Arcane Charges, you're going to refresh it so you've got a full, solid, powerful Nether Tempest for building back up to those 4 Arcane Charges. So a couple of times I'm making that mistake, but I'm actually looking forward to Warlords to play it on live to get rid of that sort of ring rust that I've got from playing a Mage for so long over Mists of Pandaria. But let's say a Nether Tempest is only one target. You can only have one Nether Tempest up at a time. Some people are a little bit beefed about that. You don't need to be, because the other choices are pretty damn good. Unstable Magic is pretty damn good. Your Arcane Blast is going to cause things to explode and deal additional damage to the single target. On top of that, you have Supernova. Supernova is fucking cool. Really cool. Replaces your Frost Nova and causes things to fly in the air. Now, please give us a glyph so it doesn't always knock things in the air. I was in a group for about 5 minutes before the tank was complaining at me knocking the targets, and it's only a minor knock. This isn't Thunderstorm, alright? It's not Thunderstorm, but it does knock the targets, and you guys know, I know it, when people start knocking targets around and you're trying to tank and you're a good tank and you're creating death balls and the mobs are flying up in the air and knocking back down, people get a little bit pissed, and understandably so. I would like a glyph that could just remove the knock. Even though it's a very minor knock, it's still going to piss people off, especially even worse players who, you know, as soon as they see a knock, they're going to go into a blind fucking rage. But it's still great for AoE. Replaces your Frost Nova, knocks them in the air, deals mad damage, and single target damage is it does double damage to like the single target as well, whoever you cast it on, make it a wonderful spell. Really cool. You'll notice that I do rock Nether Tempest, though, for the knockback reason. I just don't like annoying people. It's a habitual thing of me. I'd like to be in the background doing my job. We then got cooldowns. Again, I've mentioned it in every Mage video. Rune of Power does exist, but it does seem to be shite for Arcane. Hooray! And without Rune of Power, it's got to be said, the freedom and mobility of Arcane is upped threefold. And that's important in Warlords of Draenor. I've seen people downplay the mobility, like, well, it's not great mobility. It's actually fine. It really depends on what your talent choices are, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. If it's a low mobility fight, then you can go ahead and you can use things like Rune of Power. You don't have to use things that cause you to stand still. And again, you can switch that over. If it's a high mobility fight, then we can switch over to more stuff that can be done instant casting on the move. And I like that. So we've got Mirror Images, Rune of Power, and Incanter's Flow. It's going to be a choice probably between Rune of Power and Mirror Images for PvE. I would imagine Incanter's Flow just doesn't quite work nicely for us lining up cooldowns and stuff and all that kind of shit. It's a little bit like Bandit's Guile on the Rogue, Combat Rogues, which is like, I want it when I want it, right? I don't want it when you tell me I want it. Probably similar to the way Eclipse works now on Moonkins. I don't like it being told when it's happening. I want to tell the game when I want it. So Incanter's Flow is there. It's a nice passive for people who don't want to control other things. I kind of do see these talents, and forgive me for saying it, but I see these as kind of like newbie talents, if that makes sense. They're just passives. You don't have to do anything with them, and you're not going to be suffering overall for not having an extra keybind and an extra button. Similar in the previous tier, you've got Nether Tempest and Supernova, like I just said, but you also have Unstable Magic, which is, again, a passive. Blizzard seems to be putting in talents like this across the board, which are passives, that probably aren't as effective as using an on-use ability, but you're not going to be punished to the ends of the earth for not choosing them, which is fine. I'm okay with it. So that's the way that's rocking. What about our level 100 talents? I spoke about this in the earlier video of Arcane, is that I absolutely adore Arcane Orb. And it's not because of its damage. Its damage is actually super shit. That's fine. It's actually that it generates arcane charges. This interacts really well. Now, I'm pretty sure that Prismatic Crystal is going to be the overall winner. That's okay. I don't mind Prismatic Crystal for Arcane, I've got to be said. It's actually alright, because we have several spells that we can line up and choose regularly, unlike with Fire, that actually make Prismatic Crystal work really well. So that's fine. I'm actually really okay with that. I much prefer Arcane Orb. So I'm not saying that Prismatic Crystal is bad. It isn't. But Arcane Orb is my go-to. I absolutely adore this thing. I like the... I just like the cohesion. I really like the synergy it gives to the spec, because it's this extra option of getting arcane charges, and most of the time we're going to be fighting 1 or 2 mobs, and if it hits a couple of targets, it means you're basically back up to 4, which means you're doing a nice cyclical rotation. It's almost a reminder when it pops back up that you can do something else, and that was what Arcane was lacking. It was like, I want to do something else, but there's nothing else to fucking do. I just have to stand here and press my arcane charge, arcane charge, blah, 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 blah. Oh, everyone's calling me a noob, 1 button. I don't have another button to press. Arcane Orb brings in an extra key that not only allows you to dump your charges with a nice fucking slap in the face Arcane Barrage, but then you fire off an Arcane Orb follow-up, and therefore you get back to the Arcane charges so you can do something else. Or in the meantime, you're managing things like Nether Tempest, and you can see where I'm going here as to why Arcane is far more interesting now. It's far more interesting because we have all these different abilities to interweave into how we play, and that makes it so much more fun. So much more fun. Between Nether Tempest and Arcane Orb and Arcane Barrage and Supernova, I have lots of things I can be doing on the move. I can plan for them. I can refresh Nether Tempest reasonably early and then go into dumping it and then follow it up with an Arcane Orb. That's 3 spells that I can cast on the move should I be trying to save my blink. Max on top of that, Ice Flows. Yeah, 3 charges of Ice Flows, which means we have lovely mobility, more than you probably need in any raid encounter on a regular basis. And on top of that, you have all this different ways of generating arcane charges and then using your arcane charges. Thinking about your Nether Tempest, making sure you're refreshing it. Again, I do make some mistakes, but that's fine, man. I'm looking forward to getting back into it and retraining my hands to do it as I want it to do. And Arcane Orb and Prismatic Crystal are fine. A quick shout out to Overpowered. Fucking boring. Every single one of the mage trees has this ridiculous level 100 talent, which is absolutely been written probably by a 2-year-old. It's got to be said. Overpowered. Arcane Missile extends arcane power by 2 seconds. Excuse me while I go and throw up at how fucking bored I am. Reading that made me bored. Are you fucking joking me? If your level 100 talent is like 6 words, then it's fucking bad. It's bad. It needs shooting in the face and it needs burying somewhere where Rune of Power belongs, in my opinion. Arcane is still tons of fun. Really good fun. It's going through a bit of a process with the math right now, as are all the specs though. It's not a case of, hey, Prismatic Crystal is definitely better. We don't know. They're still in flux, still changing every day. Please read the description below just to back that up if you're not sure what I'm talking about. But Mage, fucking awesome, man. Great times. Really good times on the Mage. I'm looking forward to playing it on live and doing some gearing and actually just logging this to have fun. And I think even if you've got an alt Mage, logging it to have fun is fine and dandy, and that's a good place to be. Alright guys, I'll see you later.